You're listening to Communicate with Zen and John from Empower Your English.
We would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today at Monash University, Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, the land of Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Hi everybody, I'm Xinxin sitting in for Zen. With me is my co-host, John.
Hey Xinxin, thanks for coming on board.
Thank you very much.
What's your story?
I got different versions, so would you like a long version or a short version?
We'll make it the short version because the show only goes for 1 hour.
Awesome. I'm Xinxin, originally from China, and I have been here for about 5 years. And I love music. I love my life. It's pretty much enough for me. What do you think?
Sounds good. As I said, you're listening to Communicate. This is a program on Radio Monash. We're here every Thursday night at 6 p.m. It goes for an hour. Empower Your English basically is an organisation that we set up about 18 months ago. It really focuses on people's communication and assertiveness and empowerment and all of that. And we've got some great guests in the studio tonight.
Absolutely. In the studio with us tonight, first we have Graham Kelly. He has a range of experiences from being the CEO of large not-for-profit organizations to playing as a professional drummer.
Yeah.
Well, Graham has great skills as a strategic and a clear communicator, both inside and outside of organizations that he has led. Graham prefers face-to-face communication whenever possible to build trust and understanding, and also values technology that makes broader communication possible. During Graham's time as CEO of VicDeaf, he worked closely with people who were deaf and hard of hearing, which involved learning Auslan to help him communicate. Welcome.
Thank you.
Graham.
Great to be here.
Thank you. We also have Dr. Junyong Lee. She is a registered music therapist, senior clinical supervisor, and a researcher at the University of Melbourne. Junyong came from South Korea in 2004 to study music therapy and is now living in Australia. Since 2006, Junyong has been working with people with various disabilities and abilities with organizations such as Able Australia, Very Special Kids, and Scope. As English is a second language for Junyong, writing and speaking in particular has been a real challenge, but has also offered her amazing opportunities to learn new culture and meet with new people. Junyong is a great believer in the power of non-verbal communications and the power of music as a creative and communication tool. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
No doubt music therapy and music is a language, isn't it?
It is.
Certainly is. And I've just seen it over the years and heard it, and you've only got to go onto a train and watch people with their headphones and they're bopping away, and this is communicating, and it's all good. So we've got some great questions.
Absolutely.
Let's kick off, shall we?
Sure. So thinking about communication, what does the word empowerment mean to you?
I believe empowerment in communication can be achieved through ongoing processes. So to empower someone in their communication, we should first listen to and observe every detail of communication acts and respect any ways of communication, whether these are spoken words, facial expressions, vocalizations, or body gestures. I think I should try my best to understand the message. So when people feel they are understood and they feel satisfied, they can experience increased confidence. And if they can have these positive and successful experiences over and over, then they will be empowered in their communication.
That makes a lot of sense. How about you, Graham? What are your thoughts?
For me, John, it's communication is a process. It's not an outcome. It's not what we're trying to achieve. We use communication to engage with other people, to learn, to express ideas, to express music. So for me, communication is a tool, a really important tool, but you use it to connect with other people. And by doing that, you empower yourself because you're projecting your own view of the world and sharing ideas and, most importantly, listening to other people's ideas. Unfortunately, we often get stuck with expressing rather than listening. And one of my great learnings a long time ago was to shut up and actually listen to other people because that's where you really learn.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, it is a real big issue because what's the old saying? We've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Is that right? They say.
Yes.
And it's also understanding: are we really listening, and how do we know we're being heard?
Yeah.
So this is where passion can get in the way, can't it?
Mhm.
We all feel passionate.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And body language plays an important part as well. So body language is a two-way communication method. How do you use it, and why does it work in some cases?
Interesting.
Mm.
For a start, it depends what sort of body you've got. It does. Look at me, hot body.
Yeah.
People listen.
Yeah.
So how do you use it, John?
Body language for me. Well, for those that don't know me, I am actually a wheelchair user.
Mm.
So I say about people get out the way because it depends on what speed I'm going, or if I'm trying to catch a train, how fast I'm going.
Mm.
But no, body language. It's an interesting question because I am always about they're seeing the wheelchair before they're seeing me, so I need to distract them a little bit with my voice. Empower Your English have run workshops with Metro Trains a while ago where we're talking about personal safety and how communication plays a role. So that's where voice for me. Yeah, but body language, honestly, it's a challenge for me because they're too busy to say, well, your body's not the normal shape. So I guess I rely on my face. Things like the eyebrows and the tilting of the head and the shaking, that's my body language. If I go to start pointing with my hand, which is a different shape, they're saying, what are you doing? So it is interesting where you be aware of your body and what it can do. And I've got mates with cerebral palsy,
Yeah.
and they're shaking with different sorts of spasms, of course. But at the end of the day, they're dancing, but they're having a good time. But one of my guys said, "Would you stop throwing money on my tray? I'm just dancing." What are your thoughts on body language?
Well, I think there is a interesting theory about mirror neurons. Have you heard about that?
No?
So, no, we all have mirror neurons in our brains.
Right.
So when we watch someone moving, we can put ourselves into that position. We can feel the same emotion. For example, when we watch movie, when situations happening, we can understand how the person is feeling in the body through body languages. So we can feel the emotions through watching other person's body language. So that's how we feel connected. We can build bond and relationships, and that's we feel close with each other. So I think it is really fascinating area to think about.
Absolutely.
And Zixing, you're not going to get off the... I'd like to hear your thoughts on body language.
So for me, I'm more focused on about how do you present yourself. So for example, if you put your hands in front of your chest and hold them together, that's a way of saying I'm not in the mood to talk. But if you are having an open gesture, you're like welcome other people to talk with you. So that's very important to me, and eye contact is always important.
And sadly, the listeners can't see your face because I think your business card, if I could say,
Right.
is your amazing smile.
Thank you very much.
Years. And so Zixing, people just say on Facebook and different places, she's been saying she's got the biggest smile in the world, ladies and gentlemen.
Maybe
You
because
can't
I
see
have
it.
lots of teeth as well.
Yes, and they're all paid for, and they're all yours. Is that right?
They're healthy.
But it is. It's that smile. It's sort of.
Yeah.
I'll never forget talking to that Darren Hinch, who's a quite well-known politician, and I said one day, "Where's the business card?" He goes, "My face is my business card."
Mm.
You know, so it is interesting. Different assets we do have, But it's, your smile opens doors, Xing.
Absolutely. So my smile is kind of my success.
It is indeed.
So now looking at your own success, can you share with us a particular situation or a time where you felt your communication method was effective? And what was an indicator for you?
I'll use an example as a CEO of a large non-profit organisation trying to build a new direction for the organisation and the people it works for, which is people with disability. So in setting a new way forward, it was really important, I thought, to go and meet with people face to face. And you spoke about that before in the introduction. I mean, I can do a plan in my office and send it out and say that's what we're going to do for the next 5 years, but I actually wanted to listen to what people wanted and what their issues were and how we could improve things. The organisation I was with worked all around Victoria, so I spent a lot of my time driving around Victoria and running sessions with people in country towns with the disability, their families and staff, just to hear what they felt was really important for the future. And I was with that organisation about 5-6 years, and we did about 250 sessions across Victoria over a long period of time. And in part, the face-to-face stuff goes back to the body language. For me, it was a way of expressing my respect for people to go and visit, listen and engage with them. They're much more likely to want to then do what you think the future should be if they can trust you as a person who's prepared to go out of your way to engage with them.
Absolutely.
So that's worked really well for me.
Does it ever get challenged?
Oh, yeah, John. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. People are very suspicious initially because in the organisation I was with, that was not the way things had been done before. Sort of things would come from on high by an email or an edict would come out, whereas I was much more of wanting to engage with people. For me, the bits I love about my work are the day-to-day contact with the people that we work with, not sitting in an office writing policies. John, I've got to know you through that work, and I've learned a lot from you, not by sitting in my office, but getting out, spending time with you and you introducing me to other people. I've learned a lot through that.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, it reminds me of the misuse of emails, perhaps,
Yeah.
or SMS, because you can't watch the body language. Messages can be misunderstood by people. And I just read an article about Nicole Kidman. She said she never sent SMS to people because people often get misunderstood. So, yeah, I think body language through face-to-face interaction is really, really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You are listening to Communicate.
You're listening to Communicate with Zen and John from Empower Your English. You're listening to Communicate with Zen and John from Empower Your English.
Graham Kelly has a range of experiences from being the CEO of large not-for-profit organizations to playing as a professional drummer. Graham has great skills as a strategic and a clear communicator, both inside and outside of organizations that he has led.
And he's one of our guest speakers. And number 2 guest speaker is
Dr. Jin Yun. She is a registered music therapist, senior clinical supervisor, and a researcher at the University of Melbourne. Jin Yun came from South Australia in 2004 to study music therapy and is now living in Australia. Welcome.
And for those of those who just joined us, we are talking all aspects of communication with a little bit of flavour of music, which we might listen to later on.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What are we up to, Zig Zig? And thanks again for sitting in for Zen. You're doing a great job.
Thanks very much. So drawing on both of your backgrounds in the areas that you have worked in, is there a golden rule that you would like to share with any of our listeners who may be entering the workforce or try to break into their field of interest?
Yes, so in music therapy, we use singing preferred songs, instrumental playing, but one of the big methods is improvisation, so where people choose their own preferred instruments and interact musically and interpersonally. And in music therapy, we have techniques called mirroring, matching, turn taking, dialoguing, grounding. So,
Sounding very academic.
all these techniques we
Yep.
can actually use in our conversations by nodding to Graham's note. We exchange, we agree with each other, those kind of things. So I believe those are golden rule in improvisation, but also in general interpersonal interactions.
Is that something you can practice by yourself in the bathroom in front of a mirror?
Or maybe I can. Oh, does that mean I am interacting with me in the mirror?
I'm just wondering, you're talking about a skill,
Yeah.
okay, but it's something that you've got to work on all the time?
Yes. What about we do it just now?
What's that?
Can I play the guitar and then interact with Graham?
Let's have a go at that, yes?
Let's do it.
Moment.
Okay, because it is interesting. And what a coincidence, I can't believe you've got a guitar in your back pocket. That's all right. Do you always got that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I always bring guitar with myself. Guitar's always with me.
Okay, so just to tell the audience again what we're going to do here. So you've got a guitar, you're a music therapist, and just so tell us about a scenario. You got Graham across the table from you, and what's going to happen?
Maybe Graham is socially withdrawn.
Okay,
Doesn't like to interact much.
right, so,
And I try to make my music very interesting
yep.
and slowly motivate Graham to play with me.
Maybe.
Yeah?
See, he's playing hardball now. He doesn't want to. But luckily the door's shut.
You better be good.
Let's give it a go.
Yeah? Hi, Graham. So great to see you. Hi, Graham. Would you like to play with me? Oh my goodness! Look at Graham! Very nice, Graham. Nice music.
Yeah.
Cut. We got it.
That's
Well
awesome.
done. So once again, that was a quick jam, but there was a lot of thought behind that. And if Graham was at one of your music therapy sessions and you're talking about communication, you'd go back and write some notes to say he
Yes, yes.
displayed talk academic talk now. I'm just curious, that's all, because we know the power of music.
Yes.
But from a therapist's perspective, that was positive and it worked for you.
Yes, I always make progress notes after each session, so it's a good way to describe what happened, but also reflect what and why it was working. So maybe mainly I would say Graham was sitting by himself, trying to avoid from people, but I tried to make interesting sounds for Graham, and then start from something slow. And then keep, and also I sang, to Graham that, hi Graham, would you like to play with me? So I would be writing all this, and then I would remember what was working from this session, so I can use it in the next session. And then over time, it's just keep motivating Graham to engage with me musically, and then look for some therapeutic changes over time. And little changes are all very critical. So that's what I do. And maybe you can ask Graham how he felt about the...
Well, when you started and I was playing the withdrawn person, I felt very withdrawn, and the music didn't engage me straight away because it was slow and a bit down. But then the first time you said Graham, it sort of, okay, I need to be part of this.
Okay, yeah.
So
Because the song became personal, didn't it?
it wasn't just something you made up. You're actually talking to me
Yeah.
or singing to me.
Yeah.
And then I felt the need to actually contribute.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I noticed was when you changed rhythm, it changed the dynamic also of our interaction. So it is very powerful. I mean, music comes from inside, and then you express it through instruments. And communication and speech and even sign language is very similar. It comes from inside
Yes.
as to what you're feeling and what you want to express, and you use words or technology to express it. Music is very much the same, and we should never lose that. And it's why I love music. Is it's yet another way, I think, that you can communicate well, and it makes you feel good. That's the other thing I love about it.
That's
Sure.
right.
Yeah, interesting with music. Graham, you and I have had some experience with working with the deaf community, and I've been to discos, and they'll all often talk about the vibration coming from the floor.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
they're communicating just from vibration.
Yeah.
So
They
it's-
go off, John. They love the physical presence of music, particularly loud music.
Yeah.
As you know, you can feel it through your body, through your rib cage. Actually, is where you feel it
Yeah.
most, and they just go off. They just respond.
And these are
to
people
it.
that are totally deaf.
Yeah, profoundly deaf.
That's
people.
right. Yeah.
They love it because it's someone else communicating with them in a very visceral, very deep way, and it's just a joyful way too, particularly if it's dance. So if you get the disco, the heavy bass beat going, they're up and they're off, and it's a wonderful thing to see them do.
Very good.
Yeah, it feels like the life matching with the rhythm of music.
Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah. So apparently you all have different experiences. So what are your thoughts on the word mentoring? Have you ever been a mentor for someone, or have you had a mentor that has helped you?
Yep. Well, I looked up dictionary, and it said a mentor means an experienced and trusted advisor. So I can say maybe my PhD supervisors,
Right.
Professor Katrina McFerrin at the University of Melbourne, and Associate Professor Gina Kim in South Korea are
Right.
my mentors. And I think they, when they understand who I am, and then support me unconditionally in a humanistic belief, that's when I feel I have great mentors, and I really feel lucky to have the empowered woman in my life.
Do you feel like you've got that relationship where you can call on them at any time?
I think it's still a formal relationship because I met them as a PhD supervisor, so I wouldn't call them as my friends, but I discuss every important issues in my, especially academic and work life. So, what do you think?
You're right, there's formal and informal mentoring. I think the
Yeah.
formal stuff you're talking about, your
Yeah.
academic supervision. For me, I do professional mentoring for aspiring leaders, I suppose. And I love doing that because you can share your experience. And the most important thing I find with that is to shut up and allow people the chance to express what their intents are, their
Yep.
intentions are,
Yes.
what they're because they usually find their own solutions.
Exactly.
If you give people
While
time,
talking. Yeah.
just by expression.
Yeah.
You might guide it a little bit, but really it comes from them. On a more informal basis, I think we all have friends or family that we look to in times often of uncertainty or even trouble to say, I should go and talk to. And I'm just looking at John, thinking a good friend of ours we were just talking about earlier that is a man I think we would both go to for advice or for just, well, what do you think about that?
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah.
No, as John we're talking about, he's just wise, and just to be in the room with him, there's communication already, because somehow if I'm next to somebody, you can't explain it, but it's sort of, wow, I'm feeling good right now.
Yeah.
I'm feeling some energy. I'm a great believer in using the word energy when you talk to people, particularly to talk, listen, or just be with, or touch. Okay, I'm sort of starting to embrace more men in my life, which is interesting. The man normally don't do the affection hugging bit, but guess what? I'm kissing a lot of men at the moment, and I do that, and I'm proud.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's once again it's communication, and I'm one of 4 brothers, and it is interesting how you bond and communicate with the kiss or the hug or the knuckles or the high five.
Yeah.
This is all types of communication, but we hesitate to do it because who's going to watch or what are they going to think? But I think it's when we talk about mentoring, that's where the 2 people start to connect and forget the rules. Just follow your heart with regards to, I'm listening, I want to hear, and I want more. I think good mentoring, you always stay hungry. Okay, I don't think you know everything.
No.
And I like where different challenges are thrown at different people.
It's a lovely bit of advice there, John. Follow your heart. That's a good summary of what good mentoring's about.
I think so.
Yeah.
Follow your heart.
You were waiting for that, weren't you? This is not the Heart Foundation, but a good pitch. I like that. Sounds like a commercial, actually.
So when you are sharing a new idea with a group of people, what communication strategies have you found that work well to get people to understand your way of thinking?
Okay, I'll kick that one off. I'll pick up from what I was talking about earlier about be present. There's a danger with social media and other forms of communication to be alienated or not to be properly connected. They have a really important place for the right reasons, but I think if you're sharing a new idea, something important, you can do it on social media, but I think that face-to-face interaction, the body language, the respect you're offering by being present in the discussion counts for a lot. John, you spoke about just the sense of presence, of touch.
Yes.
You can't do that on social media.
No.
It's not to say it doesn't have a role, but for me, it's that engagement with people about sharing of ideas. A very wise man said to me a long time ago that people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. It's that level of engagement. It's not so much the intellectual capability.
Just say that again, those words.
That people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. So people look first for your emotional connection, then they'll listen to what your intellectual or your idea is. If you can't connect emotionally, people tend to turn off.
That's right.
Does that work as a parent? You're a parent?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and grandparent.
Okay.
Not so good with the little ones. They're not listening as well.
They're on a different page, aren't they? Those
Different page.
Those little ones.
But yes, to extend that, John, with our kids, we've never treated them as kids. They're little people.
Okay.
And always treated them with respect, and it just worked.
Yeah, that's good because I think once again, social media even conditions kids on what to expect from parents, which makes it hard because you all of a sudden you've got to follow a guideline because it was said on Facebook that we should be doing this, which is hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so we are now going to click the button and listen to this.
You're listening to Communicate with Zen and John from Empower Your English.
And sitting in for Zen is...
Xing Xing.
Thank you, Xing Xing, for being here today.
Thank you.
We're having a great time listening to some great guest speakers.
We have Graham Kelly, who has a range of experiences from being the CEO of large not-for-profit organizations to playing as a professional drummer. Graham has great skills as a strategic and a clear communicator, both inside and outside of organizations that he has led. And we also have Dr. Junyoung Lee. She is a registered music therapist, senior clinical supervisor, and researcher at the University of Melbourne. Junyoung came from South Korea in 2004 to study music therapy and is now live in Australia. Welcome.
Thank you.
Graham, being a drummer, I just
Yeah.
want to talk to you about communication, and I'm not sure, I guess you've looked at, we read history books, we talk about drums as a communication tool, I should say, in countryside where people need to know things. Have you looked into drumming as far as to that level at all?
Oh, yeah.
Or if you haven't, could you just make it up?
You know me too well, John.
I do.
Look, I have. I mean, drumming's one of the very earliest forms of any music, because it's a fundamental thing that people will knock two things together, whether it's your hands, two pieces of wood. It's just what you do. And then you create a noise, and then you do it in a rhythm, and people notice it. The other advantage is it carries, so you can communicate once people understand the language very easily through things like drums. So drums, for me, the connection is to the heart, because the heart is effectively a drum. It's beating on a very hopefully on a very regular rhythm for the period of your life, and it stops.
Okay.
So you actually have a natural rhythm already in your body.
Yes.
It's really then how do you express that through music, for me, that I love, because it should be just an extension of what's happening inside your body.
Yeah, and if you look at the drums, and one of my favourite drums is it's not actually drum; it's a handpan. Handpan is that silver spaceship-looking device. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's
No,
sort
I
of-
don't, John.
It's like an upside down wok.
Okay.
You've seen it. Help me describe it, Doctor.
Oh, I think you are right.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
a
upside
dome.
down.
It's a metal dome. It's got little circles on it, and you quite often see it in meditation movies. And it's sort of you're able to run your fingers around it. It's a beautiful. Go to Google it if those people want to hear unusual instrument. Go
Okay.
to handpan. That's HANPAN. Some really good sounds. It is brass. It's metal.
Oh, I know. I didn't. So, John, it creates a
Vibration?
yeah, it's a vibration. Yes,
Yeah.
it's not. I was thinking more of a drum, but no, it's like a musical note.
It
as
is,
a
yes.
vibration.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you see a lot of. I've seen a few Japanese guys busking in the Melbourne, in Australia, and they just get it going. Which is a bit talking about communication once again, getting off track a little bit. But when we talk about medication, those bowls where you run your finger around the top,
Yep.
that's once again a type of communication, is it? Because you're asking people to chill.
Yeah,
Relax.
or you are communicating with yourself,
Yes.
with your inner feelings.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also, if we look at the Waluja script, they use the bells all the time. Hare Krishnas, they'll often use bells to
Yeah.
communicate as they travel. So lots of many aspects of music and communicating.
Yeah. It's fundamental wherever you go, and I've done a lot of travel, and it's the thing that cuts through language is music. And I love that. You can go to any part of the world, and whether it's buskers or more traditional musicians, every country has their variation, and yet there's an underpinning similarity
Yeah.
that binds it together. There's more that's together than different, and I just love hearing how different people approach their music.
Very much so.
Yeah, mentioned about listening, which is very important. So in the work that you're doing, how important is listening? And do you ever reflect on, are you doing it well? This kind of question.
Yeah, maybe we can reflect back on the improvised moment just happened just before. So listening is really important, because then that means I have to really observe Graham and then try to listen to his body language, and then just trying to understand his inner feelings, why he's just sitting by himself, doesn't want to communicate with someone. So that just, listening to body language, and then try to understand the clients, and that starts from then that motivates me to play certain way. So play in minor, maybe not trying with major key, that kind of. So then, and then I get the response back from Graham. Then I can say, oh, maybe I'm doing well at the time, and then that then motivate me to do something else, and then we sort of progress step by step, moment to moment.
So you're saying
So-
this as a music therapist?
Yes.
Okay.
But maybe it can apply to every situation.
Yeah.
So I think maybe if from this studio we communicate through eye contacts a lot at the moment, and then we're watching each other's facial expressions and nodding. So that's where we understand by listening to
Yes.
and then attending, and then we get the cue. Maybe this is my time to speak now. That kind of, and then we can actually then assess. We are doing well. I
Yeah.
think we are doing very well at
But
the moment.
It's active listening.
Yes.
So you're not saying anything, but you're giving eye contact and nodding and encouragement. That's a very active way but at the same time allowing space for the other person to say what they want to and need to say. And as I said earlier, for me, it took me a long time to work out it's much better just to stop and listen to what others have to say, because that's where you learn the most. You don't learn as much from talking as you do from listening, is my experience.
Just want to dig a bit deeper, if I may, about music therapy as a communication means. Do you think society in Australia is acknowledging the power of music therapy in communication? Are you satisfied that we take it seriously?
I think in Australia, maybe I can divide people who experienced mixed therapy and who did not experience mixed therapy yet. So people who have experienced mixed therapy, they are, they believe in 100%, totally believing in it. But people who never experienced music therapy, they can be confused. They can say, oh, is it music lesson or is it entertainment? So sometimes people get very confused. So I guess we need to do more promotion and education. We have to share information about music therapy, and I think we have a lot. It's a long way to go, but I guess compared to some countries like Asian countries, Australia actually has really established good environment for music therapy. So actually we are doing good, but we can do better. Yeah.
Is it having a bigger impact with two groups I think are really important is older people? Often if there's dementia or some form of cognitive impairment, music can be a great connector.
Yes.
They may not recognise the person, but they might recognise the song or a memory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can remember their family members, but they can sing.
Yeah.
Yeah, song in with good tune, melody, and they remember all the lyrics. So it can be.
That just reminds me of that story years ago about a gentleman who had a stroke and lost his spoken voice. So he couldn't talk, but he could sing. He could sing. So he wasn't able to talk, but he could sing. And that just goes back to what you were talking about before, about how the brain's wired to have certain touch points about communication.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget that was, and you see it, it's why choirs are so popular.
It is.
Okay, the famous Choir of Hard Knocks,
Yeah.
which a lot of us may remember. Those people are communicating with society. Yes, they're homeless. Yes, they're full of tattoos and they behave in certain
Collingwood
ways.
supporters, John.
What's that? They?
Collingwood supporters.
We don't go there. But it's just interesting. If you put a room together, all singing on the same song, that's pretty powerful communication, I think.
Yeah.
They're making a statement.
Sure.
And national anthem. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Whenever you sing it, all the respect and this kind of love towards the country comes, and also the traditional songs as well. I remember there was once in a conference when I played my flute, because the bamboo flute is a traditional Chinese instrument. So after I played that, there was a lady standing there. I noticed she was crying with tears.
Well, I think we're teasing our listeners talking about your flute playing. I'm going to keep talking while you pick up your flute, because you do have a lovely bamboo flute. And would you please just a little song for us, for the listeners? I'll keep talking. You can pick it up now. I know you're here to ask questions, but I'm just putting you on the spot because I've heard Sixing play the flute, and she's pretty amazing. And this is called Abby adding lib as she sets up her computer flute. She's got to put it together. It's out of the red bag. Putting you on the spot. You were talking, Sixing, about, was it the Chinese anthem? What? I've seen people cry listening to your flute.
Oh, that was a different traditional song, yeah.
Okay. Well, give us 10 seconds of that now, if you don't mind, please, because it's a great sound, the flute. And imagine, folks, this flute is being held, what do you call side flute? Is it called a side flute?
It's a side, and it's bamboo flute.
A bamboo flute. Okay. Enjoy this, folks. Go and keep listening to this. Thanks,
very
Zing Zing.
much. Oh,
You've
thank
been
you.
listening to Zing Zing, our co-host on Communicate, brought to you by Empower You English. It is 20 to 7. Things are going well, all going well, and we've got more questions for our great guests. Who do we have in the studio with us, Zing Zing?
We have Graham Kelly here as our guest speaker. He has a range of experiences from being the CEO of large not-for-profit organizations to playing as professional drummer. Graham has great skills as a strategic and a clear communicator, both inside and outside of the organizations that he has led. And we also have Dr. Jin-Yong Lee. She is a registered music therapist, senior clinical supervisor, and researcher at the University of Melbourne. Jin-Yong came from South Korea in 2004 to study music therapy and is now living in Australia. Welcome.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next question is...
So what advice do you give to people that want to be a leader in particular field, however they're not confident to be assertive?
I'll have
Okay.
a crack at that.
Sure.
Leaders don't have to be assertive necessarily. Leaders need to have presence. They need to be clear. They need to be trusted. Assertive can be helpful, but in itself, well, let's call Donald Trump. Some would argue he's not a leader, but clearly he is a leader. He's certainly assertive.
Yes,
But I think it'd be fair to say there's low levels of trust
sure.
for many people.
Yes.
That's right.
Yet on some levels he does communicate quite well, and clearly he's enough to win the election. But my point is, you can express leadership in many different ways, and being assertive is but one of them. For me, leadership it's a very natural part of a person, and for me, the way I distinguish between leadership and management is that leaders do the right thing. They know intuitively from their experience and their training what way to go, what things to do. Managers tend to then do those things right. So one is doing the right things, one is doing them right. Many managers can't do the right thing because they don't know which choices to make, but they can be really good at doing it. But the leaders are the ones who have to work out what to do.
In the future,
Yeah,
with a vision.
set the direction,
Yeah.
then empower others
Mm-hmm.
to trust others to do it and keep them accountable for it.
Sure.
Definitely trust is the key word, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is trust.
Mm.
If you've got trust, you're halfway over the line there.
Mm.
It's very important.
Yes.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, talking about body language, trust, we can maybe, if you speak my language, we can connect. And for example, when somebody is playing drum, and if you play with the person, that means we are friends. So that's how you build trust. So in the same way, when you are leader and when you offer a vision, when people follow you and in a trusted relationship, then I think that's a good partnership, and then they can have a good work together.
I think so.
Absolutely. So good leaders is also a kind of good friend.
Yeah. Is your guitar work before led the way, you set the agenda,
Yes.
and then I had the option of joining in or not.
Yes, exactly. And then over time, when you have more power, when you lead me rather than me studying, but when you lead the music,
Yep.
you become empowered.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the process of empowerment.
Just with the guitar, I guess all instruments, but can I ask you from a therapy perspective, is it used as a tool to calm people down?
It is
Because we hear about
possible.
anxiety and autism, Asperger's, and all of this, and people with behaviours of concern, and there's a whole lot of conversations out there about how we are restraining people with medication or tying them down. Music surely has to be a something that should be explored when people working with people that have got different behaviours.
Exactly. I see some clients with severe multiple disabilities display self-injurious behaviors. So sometimes when it's very crowded environment, they can't stand the stimulation. Sometimes they get overstimulated. They hit themselves or tear their shirts or shouting, screaming, or so that's the way of expressing or communicating that they are not comfortable. They don't want to be in that area, or they want to get away from the situation. So I think you should actually really, really respect their communication act. It's a communication act if somebody display these challenging behaviors. And I have a good example of mixed therapy calming down a person with self-injurious behavior. I have this person hitting himself when he feels overwhelmed or overstimulated. Then I would be singing his favorite songs. One of the particular songs is Over the Rainbow. And then, I will try to reduce everything to minimum. My guitar volume will be really reduced to the minimum. My voice will be really, really soft. And I will guide him to breathe with me. So I'll be reminding him, this is your favorite song. For example, Graham, would you please listen and breathe with me? And then singing, and I watch him breathing, and I match my music or singing with his breathing. So then I can see him really calm at the end of the song. And I speak to him, oh, that was beautiful song, wasn't it, Graham? And then I move on to next song. And I believe many people living in group homes, maybe if disability support workers, if they can help them in those situations, that would be really beautiful.
John, my experience, exactly the area you're talking about there is in those group homes, nearly all the people that in the organisation, the Tipping Foundation that we work with, nearly all of the residents would have their own music. There'd be a common area, but then they have their own personal music. And I think that's so important for people that they can express their own view of what they like. And that can be very different between 4 or 5 people in a house, and in any house. You're going to have different music going in different rooms, but it's such a personal and calming thing because you control it, it's yours, and it's something you love. Then when you play it, you feel good.
Yeah. And you have your musical identity through the choice of your particular songs.
Interesting saying that. How often do we see a busker that's not even busking but just on the train carrying the guitar or carrying the flute, and all of a sudden you start communicating with that person because you like music.
Yep.
And it's a lovely icebreaker how music can really create communication. And it's, I love it because it's sort of people can say, well, you're on the same page as me. Yeah, I'll tell you what sort of guitar it is. And we'll talk about Sing Sing's flute. It's interesting. There's that whole tell me more how to use it and why do you use it.
Yeah.
So Sing Sing, you're a student, of course, not a student anymore, of course, but you've got circles of friends that have listened to you play. Do you find they're still, at your age, such a young person you are, are they still into like heavy metal, but do you feel that younger people are really getting into the flute and traditional music?
It really depends. Some people does, but a lot of people, they do love pop rock at this stage and listening to the pop music a lot because it's so easy to access them in radio, when driving your cars, and in the TVs and in the shopping center. So that's pop music. But I personally like traditional music. Yeah.
And I think you're well respected for it too.
Thanks very much. So now shall we move to the next question? What are some of the ways to get your point across to people who are not willing to listen?
Well,
you bring out your guitar, don't you?
Yeah,
that gets attention.
Maybe. Yeah, I think in my personal history, I think I was trying not to be disappointed, but just keep doing what I was doing, like demonstrating what I can do. Then the people who were not willing to listen turned to me slowly and suddenly listened to me and became my supporters. So I guess just keep working hard is the best thing you can do in those situations. What do you think?
And be present.
Yeah.
Because we're a bit conditioned that if people don't respond straight away that it's a rejection.
Yep.
But sometimes it's not. It's just that they haven't understood it or they're not ready. And I'm thinking particularly people with disability or people with age and dementia issues and so on. Patience is really important and humility. So don't feel upset because someone didn't respond to you. It's okay. Sometimes they're being rude and it does happen. But generally, in my experience, it's people, they're finding their time and they're finding their place where they feel they can trust you and engage. So patience is really important with that, I think.
Yes, respecting
Yeah.
their decision.
Yeah.
And
Also comes back to timing too. Have I caught you at the good
Yes.
time to communicate?
yeah.
We forget that.
Yeah.
No, I'm on the toilet, go away. Okay.
Yes.
So there's a time and place to communicate when you're in the right mood.
Right. Yeah.
John, I used to love going into our group homes. I'd go and have meals with the residents, usually at evening time. And I'd ask only if they would invite me in. They didn't have to, and most did. But I always found by about 6:30, they always eat pretty early. But by about 6:30, they lost interest. And I thought, what have I done wrong? What is it something? But they all want to go off and watch Home and Away.
You're listening to Communicate with Zen and John from Empower Your English.
And we've got about 10 minutes left, so we've got some great... Still got our guest here in the studio. And who have we got, Sixing?
Graham Kelly, who has a range of experiences from being the CEO of large not-for-profit organizations to playing as a professional drummer. Graham has great skills as a strategic and a clear communicator both inside and outside of organizations that he has led. And we also have Dr. Jin-Young Lee, who is a registered music therapist, senior clinical supervisor, and a researcher at the University of Melbourne. Jin-Young came from South Korea in 2004 to study music therapy and is now living in Australia. Welcome.
Thank you.
So what's happening in Korea with music therapy? Is it recognised? Is it a cultural thing?
Music therapy is very popular and people are very interested. So we have courses, master's level courses, but I think there's not many full-time jobs or proper jobs. So that might be an issue at the moment. So while the education part going very well, in terms of employment. So people want the qualified therapist to work as a volunteer because they feel like music is something you can. So maybe publicly it's not really recognized or
For sure. As you know, you're listening to Communicate, which is brought to you by Empower Your English. So a lot of people listening to this program right now are from other countries. So I think it is worth spending a few minutes on understanding culturally how music, because we all worry a lot about, is my English perfect? Am I going to be respected because of my English? Am I saying the right words at the right time? But once again, I've seen buskers around Australia who will pick up that instrument and say, we don't care what you speak, just keep playing. So that is communicating, isn't it? What are your thoughts on that, Graham, about culturally?
The best example it keeps coming back to me is my time at Vic Deaf, working with deaf and profoundly impaired, hearing impaired people. Most of the people that both worked there and we worked with use sign language. And when I joined the organisation as the CEO, didn't know any sign language. So it was going to be a bit tricky. Now, I got lessons and I got gradually better. And by the time I left after about 5 years, I was getting okay. But I reckon in about the second week I was there, they deliberately set me up. They didn't admit to it, but I reckon they did. I was invited to a formal function to speak at this function with an interpreter, so an Auslan interpreter. But when I arrived, the interpreter wasn't there. So I was in a room of people.
Panic.
Yeah, John, exactly what you said. I'm a pretty relaxed, cool.
Yeah.
I don't stress.
No.
But I can remember my rib cage compressing, and I was starting to feel quite stressed. And then I just had this moment of realisation. They were teaching me what they feel like in a hearing world.
Okay.
Here's what it's like for people that are deaf in a hearing world. You need to understand as a hearing person in a deaf world, this is our life experience. And gee, I learnt in an instant
Sure.
what my job was. And it was very powerful.
And Jolene, from Korea, once again, communication is an issue, and you've spoken to how you've developed. How long have you been in Australia for?
So 14 years.
14 years. Aussie.
Aussie.
But yeah, music and communication is a really big part of your life.
Yes. Yeah.
Very much so.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've got our last question.
Yeah, certainly we do. Looking at your own communication style, if you turn back the clock 2 years, what have you learned and what would you do differently?
I would be asking more questions to people. Maybe sometimes I lose focus on listening, and then sometimes I didn't understand what they said, and then I tend to move on and then have another topic. So, but I think I better ask to clarify what they meant. So then it gives people chances to clarify and explain further on their ideas, and it seems to offer everyone opportunities to develop and grow into insights all together, empowering everyone in the process. So I'll be maybe, as Graham keeps saying to us today, like, shut up, like maybe you listen, and then being patient.
For me, I'm changing going forward, giving myself more time to be a drummer again. I did it in my 20s. It was my full-time job back in the 20s before I had kids, because once you have kids, you actually got to earn some real money. And I've done that as in being a manager and so on for 30-something years. But now I want to get back to doing more music and more drumming, because it's still such a passionate part of who I am. I'll still do my professional work as well, but allow a bit more space for the drumming, because some of the best fun I ever have is playing drums, particularly with two guys who have been my best friends since school. They're still professional musicians. They work full-time as musicians. We're actually catching up tomorrow to plan some time to do some more music together. So I'm really looking forward to that. I get great joy from playing music.
Yes.
It's a joyful thing to do and to share with other people. So,
And after a big jam, I feel like, I'm asking, you feel like you have communicated.
oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Examples I give: if you've played in a team, of football or some sporting team, when you have a really good team, you know when it's great, and when you play with a group of musicians that connect, it's a similar feeling. That sense of community, that sense of skill, that sense of doing something special together. Music's a great way of achieving that.
Fantastic. Well, I think we're coming to a close. Zing Sing, I'd like to thank you very much for stepping in for Zen. You did a great job. Our
Thanks for
guests,
having
Graham
me.
and Jolene, you've been listening to Communicate. Please go and have a look at our website. It's www.eyenow.melbourne. Empower Your English is the name of the organisation, and we are on radio every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Hello, got that. I fixed that before. 6 p.m.